Well, this just in, Michigan's Supreme Court has just rejected an attempt to remove former President Trump from the Michigan ballot in 2024. This decision obviously is in contrast to Colorado's high court last week ruling that Trump is ineligible to appear on the ballot. Caitlin Polantz joins us now with more. There's so many states considering this right now. This is a crucial decision in a crucial state in this election. Tell us more.
A very crucial state, one of those states that Donald Trump wanted to contest after the 2020 election. But here in Michigan, the Michigan Supreme Court is saying this isn't something that we want to even look at. The lower courts sided with Donald Trump previously, and the justices today in Michigan this morning say we are not persuaded that the questions presented should be reviewed by this court. That is what their opinion held. That is essentially them saying we're not touching it. What has happened so far stands, and thus Trump is going to remain on the ballot in the state of Michigan. This follows a couple other major lawsuits where he has been successful in keeping his name on the ballot whenever there have been major challenges to him. Minnesota, New Hampshire, Arizona are where those other states have had that, where Trump has had that success. Very different from Colorado. In Colorado, not only did the Supreme Court there take up the case, they had a fully fleshed out case to look at. And in one of the writings from the justices today out of Michigan, they even noted that Michigan state law is much different than Colorado. Colorado law essentially says that the primaries, you have to be qualified and show that you're legally able to be on the ballot. In Michigan, doesn't have that law at all. So,
all right, guys. So y'all talk about some good news, which is the Michigan Supreme Court rejecting an attempt to have Trump removed from the ballot. Now, this comes after Trump was removed from the ballot in Colorado, or put it this way, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled that Trump should be removed from the ballot. Now, that's going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to make the final decision on that. But until then, again, you still have a ton of attempts in various states to remove Trump from the ballot. Now, most of them have been unsuccessful. The most recent of which is the Supreme Court of Michigan ruling that Trump can stay on the ballot. Now, one of the reasons why I want to talk about this, and I feel like this topic is very fascinating, because it's a good opportunity to educate you guys on kind of what this means in regards to what these justices are actually saying about our so-called democracy, which is that we're not really a democracy, right? It's like I tell you guys, for all this democracy talk, the United States is actually a plutocracy, right? And we have a monopoly in regards to who can actually hold public office, right? That monopoly is controlled by the Democrats and the Republicans, who are basically both sides of the same coin, okay? As some of these Supreme Courts have basically said, look, well, primary elections, they aren't real elections, right? They are party nominations, okay? They're not actual elections for public office, right? Like that are held by the state. No, they're held by the two parties, right? These are nominating elections that are, again, conducted by the parties in that state, which is consistent with the history of primary elections in this country, because the modern primary system that we all know in regards to people being able to actually vote on the party's nominee is very new, right? It's a recent thing. I'm talking about particularly like it came about after the 1900s, right? In the 1900s. Now, back before then, typically the nominee for the party would be chosen by the party's leaders, okay, at the state conventions or whatever, right? Basically, the party would choose. People wouldn't have that much say in regards to who could be the party's nominee. Now, primaries came about because of the progressive movement and the Democrat Party, right? In which Democrats tried to use primaries as a means of segregation. In fact, they wanted to have a all-white primary until that was struck down by the Supreme Court in 1944, right? That is a quick piece of history and facts that you'll never hear, right, about Democrats, which is that they quite literally tried to have segregated primaries, which is consistent with modern-day Democrats who claim that they've changed as they try to segregate everything in society today, right? It's pretty fascinating how that works, okay? But anyways, right, so what you're seeing here is exactly why I tell you guys that we don't actually really live in a democracy, right? I mean, for all this talk about saving our democracy, No. The United States is not a democracy, right? The United States is actually a plutocracy, right? And the plutocracy, aka government controlled by the wealthy, again, the way that they essentially rig our politics is through the Democrat and Republican parties, right? Only giving people two options, right? You have Democrats and Republicans who really are two sides of the same coin. Okay, and it is the illusion that you have a choice, right? It is an illusion. It's not real. Okay, so again, what these Supreme Court justices are saying in these states that are rejecting the bid to remove Trump from the primary ballots is essentially that, hey, these aren't real elections. We really ain't got much to do with the nomination process. Now, when it comes to Colorado, it's particularly interesting because Colorado's law dictates that people on the primary ballot have to actually be eligible for, I guess, the general ballot, okay, which by that same line of logic, Cenk Yeager, who is running against Joe Biden in the Democrat primary, is also disqualified, right? Because he's not eligible because he's not a natural-born citizen, right? He wasn't born in the United States. And as you can see, Democrats are trying to rig their Democrat primary against all of Joe Biden's opponents, right, including Cenk, by not allowing any of Joe Biden's opponents on the ballot in states like Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, etc. So again, that's what you're seeing here. This is why when people say, oh, it's a democracy, we need to say about democracy. No. It's an illusion, right? The two parties can do whatever they want to do, right? They just are pretending that they're giving you a choice when you really don't have a choice. For the most part, when we're talking about these national and federal elections. Now, at the local level, I do think that that is much more democratic. I think it does matter, right? And I think that's why people should honestly care more about local level politics than they do national level politics. But national level politics is just better theater, right? It's just more entertaining to talk about and to cover, right? So with that being said, we got to talk about the mainstream liberal media and their coverage of what's happening here in Michigan, because you guys know that, you know, there's a lot of copium at MSDNC over Michigan, Supreme Court basically refusing to overthrow democracy, right? So let's go ahead and get into it.
Some breaking news just into us. The Michigan Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump will remain on the Republican primary ballot. Obviously, a significant decision here. People have been waiting to see, given the news last week that the Colorado Supreme Court, in a 4-3 vote, voted that he should not appear on the Republican primary ballot. So he will be on that Michigan ballot. Jonathan Lemire, the Supreme Court upholding an appeals court decision that previously had found the former president could appear on the ballot. This, of course, all raised because of his role in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. We also got these tapes just last week from the Detroit News that showed Donald Trump on the phone trying to influence fake electors and everything he did to meddle in that election in Michigan. But now the Michigan State Supreme Court, again, just moments ago, ruling that he will, in fact, be on the Republican primary ballot.
Yeah, and let's be clear.
So you did hear him mention the latest scandal that the mainstream liberal media was, trying to play up, right, ahead of this decision, which is that Trump called some people and said, hey, I think some funny business is going on here with the election. Let's try to do something about it, right? Again, so this is what they're upset about, right? And they're playing that up, okay? And, they really want you to think that, Trump actually really is guilty of committing an act of insurrection, even though there's been no criminal charges brought against Trump that actually charge him with an insurrection, and nobody involved with January 6th that day has been charged with an act of insurrection. Again, that's a fact that they just conveniently always leave out here, right?
He did try to interfere and overturn the election results, but legal scholars have been split as to whether or not that should keep him from these ballots here. And we're seeing that now play out in the states. Colorado, at least for now, has him off the ballot. Now Michigan says he can stay on. And we know the Supreme Court likely will end up with that Colorado case at some point down the road. But, whether or not this holds, the politics of this are also very, very tricky. There are some Democrats.
No, it's not tricky. The politics is not tricky. You have never Trumpers and Democrats versus people who actually really do care about some semblance of democracy in this country, right? Like, people being able to choose who our leaders are, right? For the most part, that's what it's about. Because again, these people, okay, Democrats and never Trumpers, they don't believe in your ability to choose your leaders, right? They have to choose your leaders for you and give you the illusion that you have a choice, right? In this case, they're just overtly telling you, no, you don't have a choice, right? You can't pick that guy, okay? Then you got other people who are like, hey, well, we want a say in who runs this country, and they're telling you, no, you're siding with insurrectionists if you believe that, right? If you believe that you should have a say. In fact, no, they should actually allow liberal woke activist judges, okay, and some of these parties that have no real accountability to decide who can actually be on the ballot. Again, it's absolutely amazing stuff. Now, me personally, okay, I don't believe in full democracy, right? I'm gonna overtly tell you, I'm not trying to fool you. I'm telling you straight up, I don't believe everybody should vote, right? Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe that everybody shouldn't have the right to vote. I just don't believe that everybody should vote, right? There's a difference, okay? Because when you have a bunch of uneducated people voting, this is how you get Democrats elected, okay? This is how you get them elected. This is how you get liberal cities like Chicago and New York and San Francisco, a bunch of idiots voting, right? So no, I mean, again, full democracy is not good, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend to you like I believe in that, right? Because I don't.
Who say, look, Trump should be held accountable for inspiring an insurrection. That's what the amendment is about to the Constitution. Therefore, he shouldn't be able to regain office. He shouldn't be on the ballot. But other Democrats think this is just simply playing into Trump's hands. And this seems like a legal bank shot that actually makes him only politically stronger, that it fuels his arguments, as nonsensical as they are, that the deep state is trying to hold him down. And what have we seen since the Colorado case? All of these Republicans, including those who are trying to beat him in the Republican primaries, rallying to his defense. So he is only
amazing stuff. Absolutely amazing. You see how these people just, they insert their opinions into their so-called journalism, right? Well, Trump's opinions are nonsensical, that the deep state is coming after him. Well, how do you know that what he's saying is false? And who asked for your opinion? Why can't you just say that Trump believes that the deep state is coming after him without commenting on what you think about what he said, right? Just tell us what he thinks or what he said. I don't need your opinion, okay? Because it's not like you're ever going to take off your bias and actually see that, yes, Trump is being subject to persecution that would never happen to anybody else, right? Unless their name was Trump, okay? Biden is not facing any consequences for his classified document case. Hillary is not facing any consequences for her private server email scandal. So again, we've seen situations like this where the same standard is not being applied to others that is being applied to Trump. But this guy said, oh, it's nonsensical to believe that Biden's DOJ is being weaponized, right? When these are the same people, right? The mainstream liberal media that was afraid of Trump weaponizing the DOJ when Trump was in office because they knew that it's a possibility that the president can weaponize the DOJ.
Now that he's got the right attorney general in position to do it, we now know they really have been trying to gin up criminal prosecutions and criminal investigations into the president's perceived enemies, politically motivated persecution, right? Courtesy of Bill Barr. I'll roll in the FBI on you. That's how banana republics work, right?
The home of the 45th president of the United States has been raided by the FBI.
Mr. Trump is using the Justice Department to go after his perceived enemies. I feel worried about the prospect of the Justice Department being used as a tool of this president or any in our little banana republic. Any capable prosecutor can get a grand jury to hand down an indictment of something as innocent as a ham sandwich.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump.
Breaking news on former President Trump. He's been indicted for the fourth time in 5 months.
Bill Barr, on the president's behalf, is weaponizing the Justice Department to go after the president's enemies. When you win an election, you don't seek to just prosecute the losing side.
The president using the Justice Department as a weapon to get what he wants.
Department of Justice is totally politicized.
Sticking the Department of Justice on political opponents. Threatening to imprison his political rival, Banana Republic style.
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand, when Trump is in office, it's totally plausible and reasonable to speculate as a journalist that, hey, Trump could be weaponizing the DOJ to go after his political opponents. But when Biden's in office, oh, it's not a possibility. That is a ludicrous opinion from Trump, right? For him to believe that this is something that can be done by the President of the United States when the mainstream liberal media, they all agreed that it could be done by the President of the United States when Trump was in office. Again, the hypocrisy is amazing, right? It's stunning. It's so in your face.
grown stronger from that. I think there are some Democrats, frankly, who probably are breathing a sigh of relief that he won't be kicked off at least this other state's ballot.
Yeah, Peter Baker, Donald Trump objectively meddled in the Michigan election in 2020. It's all on tape. We know that to be true. But what the court has said here and in other places is this is a political issue. This is not one for the courts to decide. The Colorado Supreme Court disagreed in that 4-3 vote. But as Jonathan said, Colorado alone has given Donald Trump, and even some of his opponents like Chris Christie have said, this just gives him fuel to say, look, they're trying to stop us by these other means because they can't stop you from voting for me. So do you think we'll see this when it hits the Supreme Court, and whenever that is, and likely to the Colorado ruling go all the way to the United States Supreme Court? How is this going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, this just emphasizes why the Supreme Court is likely to take it up, right? You can't have different interpretations of the federal Constitution in different states without, you know, some serious credibility issues. Why would the Constitution mean one thing in Colorado and mean another thing in Michigan? That's why people look to the Supreme Court to tell us what the Constitution means here. What they're talking about, of course, is the 14th Amendment. This was put in after the Civil War. It was intended to mean Confederates, high-level Confederates couldn't take office afterwards. It's being applied in this case because it doesn't have a specific Confederate, labeling. It applies to any insurrection. And then people want the Supreme Court to say, okay, does this suit this particular case? And there are a number of questions here. It's not just the question of whether or not Donald Trump interfered in the election. It's for whether he led an insurrection. There are some people who disagree about that, whether that word applies in this case. He hasn't been charged with insurrection, remember, by Jack Smith. He's been charged with a number of other crimes, very serious crimes that could put him in prison if he's convicted. But he did not use insurrection as one of those charges. A lot of people say that doesn't matter. He was impeached for insurrection, even though not convicted by the Senate. There are other questions.
Yeah, so again, doesn't matter, right? So he hasn't been charged with it, hasn't been convicted, okay? Was impeached, but wasn't convicted. Doesn't matter. He's guilty anyway. He's taking him off the ballot. Right, this is Democrat logic. Okay, this is Democrat logic. This is what they're doing. Okay, they're opening up a can of worms here.
The Supreme Court has to address is this need for Congress to implement legislation to put that amendment into effect. There's some people who argue that that's in fact the case, and that may be one way the Supreme Court chooses to rule on this rather than get to the question of whether or not Trump committed insurrection or not. So there's a lot of different legal questions involved. The political questions that you and Jonathan just talked about are actually probably just as significant, right? What does this tell the electorate? Does this play into his hands by saying, see, they don't want you, the voters, to have a chance to decide this election? And a lot of Democrats think that Donald Trump is better beaten at the ballot box than beaten through the court system, because then it removes that sort of legitimacy that he's seeking from a new vote electing him to the presidency.
It's just so funny how they're more concerned about Trump's claims that the deep state has been weaponized against him. They're more concerned that voters are going to think that's true than they are about the precedent being set by Democrats, right? Asking questions about, well, is the deep state actually going after Trump? Are they weaponized to go after their political opponents? Is it right to actually be pulling somebody off the ballot based off, some liberal justices interpreting the Constitution in a very bastardized way? Is that something that should be happening in this country, right? I thought we believed in democracy, okay? No. They're more concerned about it potentially backfiring what they're doing against Trump rather than the actions in and of itself and whether or not they are warranted. It's pretty fascinating stuff. The mainstream liberal media, the copium is just at an all-time high because everything they have thrown at Trump has backfired, and there's literally nothing they can do about it. The more they attack Trump, the stronger that he gets. Fascinating stuff. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.